Absolute power, endless gold, worshipped as a living god by millions of people. Sounds like the ultimate life, right? Except the pharaoh of ancient Egypt woke up every single morning under the crushing weight of an entire civilization's survival resting on his shoulders. And more than a few of them were murdered by the very people meant to protect them. Today, we're spending one full day inside the life of a pharaoh. The rituals, the politics, the luxury, and the constant quiet fear that came with being treated as a god on earth. Before we follow one day, let's be clear about what the job actually was. A pharaoh wasn't just a king. He was believed to be the living embodiment of the god Horus, and the crucial link between the human world and the divine one. His most important job, above all else, was maintaining Ma'at, the cosmic balance of order, truth, and justice that kept the universe from collapsing into chaos. That meant the sun rising every morning, the Nile flooding on schedule, the harvest coming in, and enemies staying outside the borders were all, in the eyes of ordinary Egyptians, directly tied to the pharaoh doing his job correctly. No pressure, just the fate of the entire universe allegedly resting on how well you performed a handful of rituals. Let's follow a New Kingdom pharaoh. We'll call him Amenhotep, a name several real pharaohs carried, through a single day in his palace at Thebes. Amenhotep wakes before sunrise, not by choice, but by strict ritual schedule. A pharaoh's day was almost entirely dictated by fixed religious duties tied to the sun's movement, and missing the dawn ceremony was not an option. He's immediately surrounded by attendants, dressing him, washing him, applying kohl around his eyes, and anointing his skin with fragrant oils. Every part of this process had ceremonial meaning. Even getting dressed was treated as a small ritual of renewal, the pharaoh being symbolically reborn each morning like the sun god Ra. He's dressed in fine pleated linen, far more elaborate than anything an ordinary Egyptian would wear, along with jewelry, a ceremonial false beard, and eventually one of several crowns depending on the day's specific rituals. With the sun rising, Amenhotep's first official duty of the day begins, the morning temple ritual. Technically, the pharaoh was the chief priest of every temple in Egypt, though in daily practice, professional priests handled most rituals on his behalf. Still, key ceremonies, especially at major temples, required his direct participation. The ritual involved symbolically waking the god statue, washing it, dressing it in fresh linen, and presenting it with offerings of food, incense, and drink. A ritual meal, essentially, meant to sustain the god and keep the cosmic order functioning for another day. To ordinary Egyptians, this ritual happening every single morning somewhere in Egypt was as essential and unquestioned as the sun rising itself, and the pharaoh's role in it was the entire justification for his authority. With religious duties handled for the morning, Amenhotep moves into the part of the job modern people would actually recognize, governing. He receives reports from viziers, his most powerful officials, essentially prime ministers overseeing regions of the kingdom, on tax collection, grain reserves, construction projects, and legal disputes serious enough to require royal attention. Scribes record everything said in these meetings, since administrative record-keeping was one of ancient Egypt's most advanced systems. Taxes, grain stores, and labor allocations were tracked with obsessive precision. Foreign matters might also come up here. Messages from vassal states, reports from military commanders stationed in Nubia or the Levant, or visiting delegations bringing tribute and gifts as displays of loyalty. And running underneath every single one of these meetings, the quiet, constant awareness that a weak or distracted pharaoh could be replaced, sometimes violently. Court intrigue, power struggles between officials, and occasional assassination attempts were a real documented risk of the job, not Hollywood exaggeration. As the punishing midday heat sets in, even the pharaoh follows Egypt's universal rule: slow down or suffer. Amenhotep retreats to private quarters for the midday meal, an elaborate spread compared to an ordinary household, but built on the exact same staples: bread, beer, vegetables, and fish or fowl, just prepared and presented with far more luxury. This is one of the only stretches of the day resembling actual rest. Surrounded by trusted attendants, sometimes his wife or children, Amenhotep can briefly, simply be a person rather than a living god performing constant ceremony. Even this privacy has limits, though. Royal food was typically tasted by a servant beforehand as a precaution against poisoning, a real practice reflecting just how seriously assassination risk was taken at court. As the worst heat passes, Amenhotep's afternoon often turns toward one of the pharaoh's most consuming, lifelong projects: his own tomb. Egyptian pharaohs typically began planning and constructing their tombs the moment they took the throne. since a properly prepared tomb, filled with the right rituals, texts, and burial goods, was believed essential for a successful journey into the afterlife. He might review progress reports from the tomb site, approve designs for wall paintings depicting his achievements and journey into the afterlife, or inspect craftsmanship on furniture, statues, and jewelry destined to be buried with him. There's something strange about spending part of nearly every day, for potentially decades, planning your own death and the eternity that follows. But for a pharaoh, this wasn't morbid. It was simply one of the most important responsibilities of the entire reign. Later in the afternoon, he might also review military reports, oversee the training or inspection of elite guard units, or meet with priests planning an upcoming religious festival. Egypt's calendar was packed with festivals, many requiring direct royal participation. As the sun drops and the heat finally breaks, the evening often brought Amenhotep's most elaborate meal of the day, and sometimes the most important political theater. Formal banquets weren't just indulgence, they were diplomacy. Hosting foreign dignitaries, rewarding loyal officials, or celebrating a military victory all happened over lavish shared meals, with wine, music, and dancing signaling wealth and stability to everyone watching. Every detail, the food served, the entertainment provided, the seating arrangement, carried political weight. Being seated close to the pharaoh was a visible marker of status and favor, closely watched by everyone in the room. Amenhotep might also use this time to publicly reward a loyal official with gold collars or land grants, a real common practice used to secure loyalty and demonstrate generosity as a core pharaonic virtue. As the feast winds down and the palace quiets, Amenhotep finally retreats to his private chambers for the night. Guards remain stationed nearby, always. Ancient Egyptian history includes documented conspiracies against the throne, including at least one confirmed assassination plot against a pharaoh organized from inside his own harem and administration. Stripped of the crown, the jewelry, and the ceremonial performance, what's left is simply a person, one carrying the exhausting, lifelong responsibility of being seen as a living god, while never fully escaping the very human fear of betrayal that came with absolute power. So yes, gold, palaces, worship, absolute power, but also relentless ritual obligation, the crushing responsibility of holding the universe together in the eyes of your entire civilization, and a very real, very constant risk of betrayal from the people closest to you. Being a pharaoh wasn't a life of pure luxury. It was one of the most demanding, tightly scheduled, high-stakes jobs in the ancient world, just with significantly better outfits. If you want to see how the rest of ancient Egyptian society lived, from household servants to pyramid builders to ordinary farmers, there's a whole playlist waiting for you right there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.